Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the 3DO company, the console, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Thrak. How you doing, Thrak?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a short week for us. I It's interesting. Like the company I work for actually gives us a Good Friday off, which I've realized not a lot of people actually get off in
Well, there
hindsight.
you go. Praise God.
But because it's a short week, it's going by like twice as long as a normal week would go.
Yeah, it's because you're thinking about it.
Yeah. But other than that, not bad. Got massive traffic jam after leaving work today. Like took me like 30 minutes to get home. Usually takes like 10.
Well, at least you're not in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just fucking damn. That whole thing's rough.
That I watched the video. That bridge legit just went down.
Destroyed. Yeah, just gone completely. And of course, the internet being the internet, people are throwing all their conspiracies out there. Like people being like, how do they know there's this many people missing or whatever? And it's like, they probably asked the construction company how many people they assigned that job. Like, people keep track of this shit, y'all. And they're like, why are there so many like cameras? And it's like, well, people like putting cameras on bridges. Like, I wonder how many cameras are on the Golden Gate Bridge right now.
There People would be amazed that there are fanatics for just about everything.
Yeah, and like cities like to put up live streams of like Times Square or like major metropolitan areas. It's not that crazy. It's not. But we won't get deep into that because that's a whole can of worms and it's just going to make me upset. But today is a big day. It's an exciting day for me. I don't know if it is for you because we finally get to talk about the lizard freak himself. Good old Gex. How much does that long box cost you?
Um so they were selling it for $100. I
Mm-hmm.
got it as a bundle because I bought it with my 3DO. So when I bought it, the store I bought it from is like the old retro store from my hometown. I got the 3DO FC1, Shockwave, Mist, Road Rash, and Gex all together for $200, like as like a bundle.
That's a
So
great deal. It really
yeah.
is.
Well, it was kind of like I knew the owner. Well, I still know him, but we were good friends, and we were chatting about it. And he basically told me, he's like, this thing's been sitting here for like a year now, and nobody wants it. If you'll take it off my hands, I'll give you this deal. And I was like, sure,
Sold. Sold. I'm gonna start a podcast with it.
yeah, kind of. Um,
If only he knew.
well, he does. He's aware.
Okay, good. Good.
But
Is the back of that Gex long box messed up? Or is that just the lighting?
so the top is a little crushed in. The
I
back
was
is
Oh, okay, okay. Because from the
so.
angle it looked like it was like ripped or something.
I actually wanted to bring that up because I do have the PlayStation version as well here.
Ah,
And
yes.
one of the things I love about the Gex long box is the entire gimmick is that like Gex ripped the box open, and that's why like the disc is chilling there.
Yeah.
But with the PS1 release, because obviously a PS1 jewel case doesn't look anything like this,
Yeah.
they edited it and it just looks stupid on PS1.
Looks like he's like sitting next to a mini disc.
Yeah, like this doesn't work nearly
Yeah,
as well.
because the 3DO jewel box, they like just crop it,
Yeah.
basically. Pretty roughly, I may add.
One thing that I find really interesting though is on the back of the long box, there's this whole like blurb that's written as if Gex wrote it. And it's actually really entertaining. Like it's does he kiss his mother with that mouth? The digitized voice of Dana Gold, headliner of his own HBO comedy special, stars as Gex with rapid fire wisecracks and one-liners. Gex's mouth gets him in trouble, but it's his thrashing tail that gets him out. Gex gets stuck in the media dimension, the place where cheesy 70s television shows and movies go to retire. To escape, he's got to kill a television in each world. Remember that bumper sticker?
What?
That's literally what it says at the end.
I believe you. I believe you. And to further that, the manual has like a whole short story called "A Bad TV Day," where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes 6 pages detailing Gex's entire history, like his family history, why he's living where he is, his television addiction, like the death of his father.
Yeah.
Like the quote here is that all changed though the day his mother got a call from NASA telling her the tragic news. The rocket containing Dad and 10 other volunteers chosen to see if they would eat tapioca pudding in zero gravity had exploded on the launch pad due to a Band-Aid floating in one of the fuel tanks. The family's carefree upper middle class life was shattered. And that's that like are they referencing Challenger with that? Would they
Um,
dare? Would they dare?
they are considering how unaware, like overly aware this game tries to be. It wouldn't surprise me.
I yeah, it's very it's borderline tasteless, I
Yeah,
think.
there's a level later in the game that is very questionable.
I may know the one you're talking about. We'll get
Uh,
there.
yeah, well, okay, it's depends on your how you view it, but this game is to call it a period piece would be an
Accurate?
understatement.
Yeah. It's it's the all that of the 3DO.
I
Because
just watched.
if you've ever gone back and watched like the original all that, it is very of its time.
I just got
Very.
all that ruined for me recently because me and Alex decided to watch Quiet on the Set.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so weird when that happened. I was like, I thought we all knew.
We did. See, the Dan Snyder stuff, that didn't affect me. I was like, yeah, I knew that. And then I found out fucking Pickle Boy was a fucking raging pedophile. And I was like, fuck.
Oh yeah, yeah, that part.
Yeah. I was
Oh
like,
boy.
yeah. Um, we may be talking about that on GNC within a few weeks. So more on that later.
Yeah, you guys have fun with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
No,
Anyways,
I don't blame you.
well, I haven't even seen Quiet on the Set, so I can't say. But in any case, yeah, Gex. Finally, what we knocked out Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, one of the big ones. So I think it felt natural to knock out another one of the big ones, one that I had been dying to play for a good while. Um,
The
because
system's quote unquote killer app, as they say.
one of the killer apps, I would say. I'd say it's one of them. And people would say like, "Oh, this is like the 3DO's mascot." And I would argue there's a different game that feels more like the 3DO's mascot than this. Maybe it's because Gex kind of moved past the 3DO, and
Yeah.
kind of became a small little series on its own on like the PlayStation and the Saturn and the Nintendo 64. And just learning today, there were Game Boy Color versions of 2 and 3.
Yep. They're actually maybe worth talking about in the future. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah, I imagine we will come back to the Gex games because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, there's quite a bit to talk about with this guy already, So this Geico car insurance salesman looking ass.
Yeah. So if you notice closely on the box, we mentioned it previously, but those guys right there.
Crystal Dynamics for our audio listeners. This is it's not their first game, but it's their first major game. It's the game that kind of broke them through the like I guess the low ceiling that was there for developers, I guess.
Yeah, the Gex is an interesting one. Like I was actually looking into some of the people behind it. One name in particular stuck out right away. Programmers for this game. There was Greg Tavers, and then the one that I noticed immediately, Evan Wells, who nowadays may be better known as the co-president of Naughty Dog. So,
well, I know him for working on Toe Jam and Neural Panic and Funkotron.
that as well. He's been around and he's made some pretty good stuff back in his day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like as you said, he was there for all most of the major Naughty Dog stuff, so it would make sense.
Also, I found this interesting. It doesn't surprise me, but it should be noted that the writers for this game were Robert Cohen and Gex's voice, Dana Gold, was a writer on this game. Yeah, pretty expectedly, honestly.
It makes sense for its, very of its time kind of humor as well.
Yeah, to call this game dated is underselling it. Dated
Yeah,
in terms of writing, I should say.
for sure, for sure. For sure. It's basically, I guess the plot of the game is that Gex is watching TV,
Right
right?
after his round of nude funker size.
Yes, he is a couch potato. Like even in the little short story in here, it talks about how the death of his father caused him to just start like watching the TV because it was like a way to get away from all of that, that grief, I guess, to the point where his mom kicked him out because he was watching too much TV and then became like some weird like homeless guy on the streets or something. And then his mom finds him in a limo and she's like, hey, like our uncle died or whatever, and he had like $98 billion, and we just inherited that. So they reunited, and then Gex took his share and is now living in this like slump shitty apartment where he just watches TV all day. And somebody by the name of Rez, who I guess lives in the TV, like he's TV's villain or something. I'm not quite sure, but he gets Captain End like straight into the TV, or even Comic Zoned into the TV, and now he must fight his way back out. And the only way
He
he can
gets
get back out is by defeating Rez.
he gets Cheetah Man pulled in directly by the balls.
Yeah, this game is kind of pulling you by the balls in that regard. I'm surprised Gex doesn't say anything like that here.
Yeah, the opening cinematic. So, unlike Gex 2 and 3, this game has like two CGI cutscenes, one at the beginning, one at the end. They look fairly still pretty good for 90s CGI. I'm not gonna lie.
Reminds me of D, but this has more character than D.
It looks better than D. I'll say that. Like it's still.
Yeah.
I will say like so I played both the PlayStation and 3DO version for this episode. The CGI definitely looks better on the PlayStation version. They probably just used a higher quality video file.
Most likely. I played the 3DO version, and then a long time ago I emulated the Saturn version as well. So, but it's been so long since I played that, I can't really comment. But my guess is the Saturn version is comparable to the original PlayStation version. That would be my guess.
From what I remember, from what I've seen, I've watched a few video comparisons. From what it looks like, all the versions are pretty much identical. The resolution may be a little higher on the PS1 PC versions. Other than that, though, gameplay wise, they're pretty similar.
Yeah, I did have some issue with the 3DO version, but we'll get to that maybe in a little bit. Um, but yeah, where did you first hear about Gex?
So I first heard about Gex back in the day as a kid. I had a friend who had Gex 64, which is Gex 2 on everything else, for his N64, and he would play that a lot. And I remember watching and being like, "Oh, it's a gecko that runs around." And the N64 version of Gex 2 is not the best way to play that game by a long shot.
I've heard that.
He's missing most of his dialogue, and it doesn't run nearly as well. But that's how I discovered Gex, and I ended up renting the PS1 version of Gex Enter the Gecko, and I ended up liking it, but I had never. So because it was called Gex Enter the Gecko, I didn't realize it was a sequel to anything. So I kind of played that one and then forgot about it after for years.
It's weird it's not called Gex 2, but maybe because it was kind of breaking from the 3DO and becoming its own thing, maybe they just didn't want to put Gex 2 on it to make people go back and play the first one. Maybe it's an old trick that people have with games or other media. It's like, oh, if we, if we're doing like a reboot, I don't know if Enter the Gecko is really a reboot, but if they're getting to a point where it's like, hey, let's not put a number on this because people will most likely jump into this one thinking it's the first one, you know?
Yeah.
Like I learned about Gex weirdly enough through that same AVGN video where he talks about plumbers don't wear ties, I believe. Because he does a little thing about the 3DO at the start, and he mentions he's like, there are some good games on the 3DO, and one of them he shows is gameplay of Gex, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of neat. And then just over the years, I was able to eventually find it, and I played a bit of it, and I was like, huh, not bad, kind of interesting. And then it became a bit of a meme through I don't know if Scott the Woz started the Gex meme.
He started the Gex 2 meme, anyways. The whole like it's
Okay.
Gex night.
Yeah, he probably caused a resurgence in the meme of Gex because Gex is kind of a memeable character, like in ways similar to Sonic, but because he doesn't have the same popularity as Sonic, it just doesn't hit the same way, Like if you're making jokes about Gex, you're in the know.
See, Gex, maybe not Sonic so much. I think Gex is more memeable in comparison to like Bubsy. Only difference is Gex's games are actually good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was saying to somebody in a Discord a while ago that Bubsy to me is what I assume people who don't like Sonic think Sonic is.
Yeah,
Because
honestly.
Bubsy controls like shit, and those games aren't really any fun at all. I don't see the appeal.
The best.
And when I play Bubsy, when I'm playing it, I'm like, oh, this is probably what like people who claim Sonic was never good think Sonic is.
Yeah,
When
like
when it's like, but if you compare Bubsy to Sonic, Sonic is so much better
oh yeah,
in like every facet. I don't get it.
the best Bubsy game to me is Paws on Fire, and that's just because it's literally just Bit Trip Runner. That's it.
Is that the second Bubsy game?
That's the second new one.
They did another new one?
Yeah, they did the
Holy shit.
yeah they did two new ones. The first one was a very average platformer that played fine but was boring. The second one was legitimately just Bit Trip Runner.
Yes. Oh, the original one is Bubsy and Claws Encounters of the Furred Kind, which is such a terrible name.
Yeah, then
And
there's
then there was
Bubsy 2.
two Bubsy Fractured Furry Tales. And
Oh,
I'm
the
thinking, wait,
Jaguar game.
isn't that just Bubsy 2?
Well,
It's
no,
its own it's its
there's
own thing.
yeah, there's two, and then the Jaguar had the Furry Tales one
And then Bubsy 3D or Bubsy is 3D in
in
Forbidden
Forbidden
Planet.
Planet.
And then yeah, there was the Woolies Strike Back, which when I heard Bubsy was coming back, I'm like, these people have no shame, man. No shame. Um and then learning that like Accolade kind of existed, or I think it was like UFO bot Accolade. I don't know.
It was Accolade in name only.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then obviously Woolly Strikes Back didn't do good at all, so who gave a shit? But I guess yeah, as you said, they did Bit Trip Runner and Paws on Fire, which I did not know this was a thing.
Yeah, I bought it just out of curiosity, and I played. I'm like, this is just Bit Trip Runner. I'm like, hey, so it's good, but it's
Like, just
Bubsy's.
play Bit Trip Runner. Why
Exactly,
play this?
exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's no Bubsy on 3DO, which is a shame. I feel like it'd be a perfect fit.
yeah, I know it would give the 3DO another platformer.
Yeah,
Besides, like
like
the
so I could sit here shit talking Bubsy for an hour, but everybody does that anyways.
yeah. But Gex, on the other hand, is not a bad game. Um,
No, no.
you know what's funny?
Dare I say I really liked it.
Hmm. It's really funny. Like, so Gex has been through like multiple periods. Like, there was his early time where like he was people knew about him and they kind of liked his games overall, and he was generally well received. Then he went through that period in like the 2000s where everyone just kind of like shat on him. Um, like I remember Game Informer had an art. It was like one of those like one of their little side articles, and it was like all these different mascots throughout the years, and you could do like this like choose your own like one of those like weird like graphs that you kind of pick the pathway of, and you see where you end up. And I always remember because like you'd end up like one of them was like do you play as a like reptile kind of character? And it was like Spyro and then Gex, and then it was like, are your games good? It's like it said Spyro, the first three were, and then Gex, it was just kind of like an
Yeah,
um
I think it was that era where in the 2000s it felt like Game Informer and all these other publications are trying to shit on a lot of the past of video
mm,
games. Like if you hadn't had that sort of success, like say like a Mario or even like a Spyro the Dragon or something like that, like it felt like people were just like, "Oh, that's like old bullshit. Who cares?" Right? It's
yeah.
not the new thing, right? It was sort of that era where it was like before retro gaming was like cool. Like playing old games was kind of like its own weird taboo where it's like just play the new stuff. Why are you playing all the old stuff?
Mm,
And then I think it was in the 2010s where I think that was around the time of NES nostalgia becoming a big deal and like retro gaming becoming cool again. And then you had developers starting to make games that were more in that style. Couple that with also like Xbox Live Arcade being a big thing, and there was a lot of older 2D style games released on there, on WiiWare as well. So it was just like that weird time where people were kind of shitting on 2D games in general, I think.
yeah.
Where like 2D games are kind of relegated to like Game Boy Advance kind of whatever stuff. You know what I mean? When even and even looking back at like those games on GBA and even DS, like those games are fantastic as well. I think just as I guess the gaming industry as a whole has gotten better with like appreciating 2D games for what they are. I think. I think we've gotten into a better spot.
Yeah. Honestly, now they kind of stand on their own next to 3D games, and they're like both kind of their own separate things.
Yeah, the only time it becomes a talking point is if say like a Metroid Dread comes out that's $60 and then people are like, "Oh, should a 2D game be $60?" And it's like, I mean, if you don't want to pay 60 for it, well, it's Nintendo, fuck you, I guess.
Yeah.
You get it used for like 40 later.
Well, no, it's Nintendo. That thing's going to be 60 forever.
No, you buy a used copy for like
True.
$40 or something. Yeah.
True.
So yeah, there's a certain group of gamers who find 2D games weird. They just don't like them.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of people who like won't watch black and white movies because they're in black and white, which those people make my skin crawl. Like
Hmm.
they're disgusting creatures. You're missing out on some good cinema.
Hmm. So Gex, going into Gex 1 itself. So Gex 1 is actually to me like a very interesting platformer in a lot of ways. Um, because Gex is a gecko, his gimmick is he can stick to walls and ceilings. And in a 2D platform, that kind of changes like the idea of like how levels progress in like a lot of ways.
Gex finds a way of mixing these sort of traditional 2D platforming elements that were established with Mario and later with Sonic. Like those two are like in this era, those are the two big platformers, right? And then you have like all the B tiers, your Bubsies, your Gexes, your Aero the Acrobats, your Zools, all Cool Spot. I could keep going. Like a bunch of those, right? And Gex finds a way of mixing, say, like there's definitely a Mario influence.
Oh yeah.
There's definitely a Sonic influence, but it also is able to bring in, as you said, fresh elements with the wall climbing, and not just the wall climbing of like your standard, like oh, I can go on the wall and go in the ceiling. You can also climb on some of the walls in the background
Yes.
as well. And as the game progresses, the level design becomes more and more built around that. So there are certain like sections of levels or even like whole levels where you're basically just attached to the wall the whole time.
Hmm.
And you sort of have to figure your way around the level in sort of a slightly different way than just your standard just running to the right, which is really cool. And the levels have kind of a mazy design, but they're not that bad.
Yeah.
They I guess maybe they operate kind of in like a Sonic way where there's like different layers, but they all kind of tunnel toward the same exit anyways.
They're mostly linear, but they have kind of some alternate paths that you can take
Yes.
throughout.
Yeah, it's like a Sonic 2 kind of thing, I think. Especially when the game is like, oh, in each level you have to find this specific item, which I believe is a remote control to access like
Yes.
another level.
Yes.
When you first see that, or at least for me, I thought, oh, is this going to be a platformer where it's going to be like super hidden and I have to like go around every little corner to find it? I was glad that I was wrong, and that the game, the levels kind of tunnel you into finding that remote control pretty quickly, so that you can, get back out of the exit and move on to the next level. Like none of the levels are crazy long.
No, not at all. There is a lot of levels though, which makes up for it.
Not as many as say like a Mario game.
True.
Mario games are usually packed with levels. But yeah, thankfully this one, yeah, it has, I think, just the right amount. Like not too much, not too little. You can tell that like this really is showing off Crystal Dynamics' talent as a developer, because I think the games before this they did were they done Crash and Burn.
Crash and Burn,
They did
Solar Eclipse.
yeah, Solar Eclipse. They did the port of Samurai Showdown.
Samurai Showdown.
Did they do Off-World
Off-Road.
Interceptor?
Yep. Off-World Interceptor. That was
Yeah,
Gex was their fourth game. Ironically, Gex was the game that showcased their 2D capabilities.
yeah, like, well, because everything else they were doing was like vehicle-based games.
Vehicle,
And
flight, or vehicle or flight games.
yeah, basically. And they're, kind of a mixed bag, I would say. So with Gex, it's like a completely different genre, but it feels like to me the devs had a lot of experience in playing, like, say, Mario World and like Sonic's like 1 through 3, and probably some of the other platformers at the time. I mean, they were everywhere back then.
Oh yeah.
And you get the sense that Crystal kind of studied all of those games and were like, how do we like make one that kind of fits in, sticks out in its own way, but at the end of the day is still a really good game. It
Yeah.
fits in perfectly with the times, which is, I think, what makes it memeable with all like the jokes and everything. But I was surprised that sitting down and playing the game properly and beating the whole thing, there is a secret world I could not get to, unfortunately, which is a bit more of a Mario World influence, having that kind of secret world. Despite that, I was surprised that the game is like pretty good, like pretty damn good for what it is.
It is a very solid platformer. Like, to me, like what makes this game such a well-designed game is most platformers you play, they're going to have frustrating sections. That's just kind of how platformers are. But there was never a point in this game where I was like, that's bullshit, and I just like raged out. Like, I found most things to be generally achievable. Yeah, there was frustrations going to happen with any game. Just sometimes things just don't jive with your style. But
The only levels that I found kind of on the frustrating side was, well, all the various worlds, I guess we can say. You start out in a cemetery kind of area, and then you go into like New Cartoon Land,
yeah,
and then you go into like a jungle kind of area, and then you do like I think they call it Kung Fu-ville or something.
yeah, the questionable one.
A little insensitive, with like sumo wrestlers that you can bounce on their tummies. There's like Raiden everywhere, like
Yeah.
electric eels. It's very, and the music is kind of
The music is probably the most
yeah, the Asian riff. You know the Asian riff.
I will say Gex's quotes weren't as bad as I was expecting.
He doesn't shut the fuck up though.
No. We'll get to Gex's talking later, but I will say for that part, he didn't say anything where I was like, oh no. Like, it was mostly the background itself that was kind of like, oh no, this is the 90s, all right.
Yeah, I'll give Gex credit in that he doesn't say anything that's like offensive or kind of off color. He's just like making essentially like 90s stand-up kind of like referential humor. Like when you fight the final boss, he goes, "Oh, it's Darth Vader's younger brother, Myron." It's like, what?
Yeah,
is there a joke there? Like, or he's like, "This guy's nuts. Have you been on Geraldo yet?" Which, that's a dated ass reference. I know that reference. Like,
I know
Geraldo, piece of shit. But
one of his ending quotes is like, Obi-Wan says that this one is strong or something, and it's like, okay.
All of this for Rosebud.
Yeah. I believe the best review I've ever seen for this game was like, well, referring to the comedy in it, it was like, this game was dated when it came out.
For real. It's just a very specific kind of referential, like pre-Family Guy referential type of humor, you know? And it's a shame that like I'm such a fucking nerd that I know some of these outdated
Yeah.
references that I shouldn't. And also every once in a while I would giggle, but it's more of like a lot of things when I laugh at them, I just laugh at how bad it is. You know,
I
and
mean,
that's
my
and that's one of the parts about Gex I didn't care for is that he just doesn't know when to shut up. You
yeah,
know,
that's
like that feels like a Sonic thing because Sonic was known for having like, oh, he's like a cool dude, he's got attitude, blah 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 blah. And Gex is like, oh, we'll take that one step further than Sonic because Sonic knows when to be serious. You know, like they
yeah.
know when to play it up and be silly, but then they know when to, like, say, when he's fighting Robotnik, he takes it seriously. Whereas Gex doesn't take a damn thing of this
No.
seriously.
Um
And it's like, dude, if you fuck this up, you're stuck here forever.
yeah. I'll save it for when we talk about the ending because I love his quote at the end of the game. But
That's a
um
good quote.
literally like throughout the game, Gex just fucking doesn't give a shit, and I kind of like it in a sense too, because I kind of enjoy the fact that he's a protagonist of a game that doesn't care about anything going on right now.
For like modern gaming standards, it's kind of refreshing
Hmm.
to not have these crazy emotional weights tied to everything, you know? It's nice. And very silly, you know,
Like,
but the silliness can wear on you.
well, it's more once he starts repeating quotes, and then you kind of
Oh
get
yeah. Yeah, because I imagine there's only so many they could fit, say, on the disc, or so many that they could just think up, you know?
yeah, especially in a 2D game. In the 3D games, he has a bit more variety overall. Um, like I will say, like some of my favorites are like in the graveyard. So the way every level like world is set up is like you have this kind of hub with a bunch of different levels, and you have to get remotes to unlock more levels. But when he's in these little hub worlds, he'll say like these random quotes. Like one of my favorites is in the graveyard. He'll be like, "Hey Scoop, let's find the mystery van."
Gee, Scoob, let's get back to the mystery van. Like he's doing a Shaggy impression.
Yeah, like a bad Shaggy impression.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's so fucking weird, man.
And then a later one in like the more prehistoric-ish kind of overworld, he goes like, Wilma.
Oh, he did. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you, man?
It's like I think Dana Gold was just doing his stand-up half the time.
I guess I've never seen Dana Gold stand up, so I cannot say if he's any good or not. I doubt any of his fans will attack us, but you know.
The most I know about Dana Gold was A Gex and that he was a writer on The Simpsons for a while, not during the good era. I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Um, I was gonna. Oh, that's right. This is one of two games I know for the 3DO that are focused around a stand-up comedian.
Yes.
Because there's another. It's not really a game though. It's just a thing. I don't know if we'll ever cover it on the show, so I guess I'll mention it here. Have you heard of Dennis Miller's That's News to Me?
I know of it. I've never played it though.
So it's not really a game per se. Like I think Dennis Miller was on SNL and he was doing Weekend Update at the time, and I believe it's just a collection of some of his like Weekend Update stuff, like just on a 3DO disc, and it's all
Huh.
just kind of centered around him. And I played it, I think on emulator, and I was just like, what is why is this what it is? You know what I mean? I don't know. Like I guess Dennis Miller is known for like being like a political commentator, comedian kind of guy. He's like Jon Stewart, but not as good.
Yeah.
So that's my guess. But I don't know. I'm not trying to shit on Dennis Miller, but it was so weird that was a thing that happened.
Yeah. The
So
3DO had a lot of games like that.
well, I wouldn't even call them games though. Like
Well,
they're just like software.
yeah. What's funny to me is I was just noticed this too, looking at the box. This is a rare 3DO game that actually has an ESRB rating.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, K to A. That's about right for that game.
What's funny though is PS1 version is E.
Oh yeah, because they switched to E, I think in like '96
Yeah,
or
they
something
dropped
like that.
they dropped K to A because it was too broad.
Yeah, well, and K to A is too much.
Yeah,
It's too much to think about, like kids to adults. Whereas just like E, it's like, oh, it's for everyone.
yeah.
Easier to think about. And then they had, well, yeah, I think it was E. It was KATM. They swapped KA to ETM. They I think added EC in like the mid 2000s. I think around the same time they added the E10 plus rating for.
EC I think was actually around earlier because there was edutainment games on like PS1 in the 90s that had that rating.
Okay, okay, yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
They've actually dropped it. They don't use it anymore at all.
Really, I thought there were still games that get EC, but it's just very rarely.
Nah, they dropped it entirely because they basically pointed out that most of those games are qualify as E for everyone anyways, so they just figured there's no
Yeah.
point.
Like you don't have to rate a Sesame Street game EC. Like we know
Yeah.
what a Sesame Street game is.
See, the one EC game I own that I can think of off the top of my head is like Rayman Brain Games on PS1.
Interesting. And then did they have AO at the start?
They've had AO since the start. The reason why AO is kind of weird is that it's Sony, Sega, and Nintendo, and then later Microsoft basically made a pact that they would never allow an AO game on their systems.
And I believe all of the major retailers have even
Yes.
said they won't stock AO games.
Because the most infamous AO game, which is hilarious because it's kind of a joke if you actually play it nowadays, was Thrill Kill, which was a 3D fighting game that like the developers went out of their way to get an AO rating because they thought that would boost sales, and then they found out, shit, we can't release it on any console because they won't let us.
Well, and then they toned it down to an M, and then it never got released.
Yeah, it got canceled, and its engine was later used in that Wu-Tang Clan Shaolin Fighters game.
Yeah, with that terrible Wu-Tang Clan controller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that thing.
Yeah,
It's so
I
stupid.
love. Hey, I love Wu. I love the Wu Tang, but it's a weird thing. I think they're making a new Wu Tang game, like an action RPG thing. I haven't heard about it in a while. I
You
should
can
check in on it.
you can find the ROM for Thrill Kill online. It
Yeah,
is
you can play it if you want. It's fine.
it is laughable that that got an AO rating.
Different times, I think.
Yeah.
Different times. I was gonna say technically the most notorious AO game is GTA San Andreas.
Yes, only the PC version.
Well, when everybody found out about the hot coffee mod, they re-rated it AO, and so they had to pull it from all the shelves. And so because of that, Rockstar made a second edition
yeah,
of San Andreas where they completely removed it. So you may see copies if you're out in the retro store, right? And you go into like the PS2 section, look at the copies of San Andreas. Some of them may say second edition on it, which means
yeah,
there's no way to access the hot coffee mod at all, which is crazy because even in the original version, you could only access it through hacking the game.
yeah.
So it wasn't even like easy to get. It was just people found out about it, and because GTA was already on such kind of thin ice with these people, anyways, it was the catalyst to try to fuck with it.
I love the hot coffee mod in hindsight just because it is the dumbest fucking thing. It's just two fully clothed models humping each other.
It's the equivalent of having like a Barbie and a GI Joe do this.
Yeah, it is so
it's
stupid.
the same thing. That's all it looks like.
Manhunt 2 got an AO for the PC version.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's
yeah,
the only other one I can think
yeah.
of.
Outside of that, it's just porn games. That's basically all
Yeah.
it gets it. So,
Mail
like, I
order
bet
games.
you, like, is Honey Pop 2 AO? Probably is.
I'd have to. So you can find a ton of AO games if you go on Steam without safe search on. Have fun with that one, kids.
I will say I typed in Honey Pop on ESRB and got nothing.
They probably don't know what it is.
Because you can't search by like the ratings. Because yeah, you have E, E10, TM, AO, and then they have rating pending, and then I like this one, rating pending, likely mature. I like
likely
that.
mature.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we know. That's like probably like the GTA 6 trailer probably had that on there. Where it's like, yeah, we know.
That's still my favorite. Like, my favorite part. One last tangent before we get back to Gex. One of my favorite parts of the ratings though is like the little like descriptions on the back of why it got the rating.
Oh yeah, and when there's nothing there, they just say, "Oh, visit our website."
Yeah. My favorite one still by far though is Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes had one of the tags for why it was M rated was sexual violence, which the funniest interaction I ever had with a parent at a GameStop was there was a mom that was trying to buy a game for her kid, and she was considering GTA. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, but she was trying to ask the employee. I don't know, parents and kids. I'll never understand, but she was asking the employee like, "What is sexual violence in the game?" and the employee had never played it, and I had, so I was sitting there going like, "Do I tell her?"
Do it. Do it.
Because she was like, but I always laugh because the way she was asking the employee was, was it like a bitch slap? Like that was her
What?
her
That
idea of sexual violence.
I think that I don't know about that.
But then I had to go up to her and pull her aside and be like, so there's a point in the game where one of the characters has a bomb in her vagina,
Oh.
and
yeah.
she immediately went, okay, not this game, and I was just like. I was like, I am sorry, and thank you for your time. And I walked away.
Yeah, get him chicken shoot or something.
Yeah,
Get
oops,
him
there.
Gex. Well, Gex isn't available yet. So
Yeah, I was like, when I saw her like considering Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm like, that is not the franchise
Yeah.
for a kid, especially like
No, not
just
at all.
trying to. They'll get bored in the opening cutscene alone.
That's so true. Oh, Ground Zeroes. Oh boy. But yeah, like I remember when I was getting to that certain age where I was like wanting to play those M games, but my parents were just like, yeah, whatever. They just kind of stopped caring. So like whenever I would get one of those games, the guy would be like, "Well, I have to tell you it's mature." And my parents always said, "Oh, he's seen worse." And I'm always like, "What the fuck do they think I've seen worse?" Like
Yeah.
probably the other game they bought me.
Yeah, I didn't.
But
My parents were more strict about that. I didn't get M-rated games till I turned 17.
yeah. Yeah. But like say like I'm playing say No More Heroes 3, right? Like this game earns its mature rating. I can
Oh,
definitely say
yeah.
that. Oh boy. Oh boy. All
Um,
right, anyways, back to Gex. I don't know why we did such a thing with the ESRB rating. The
that,
ESRB have a blog. Like who the
yeah.
fuck reads that? Anyways. But yeah,
So
what else were we saying about Gex?
we didn't talk about the power-ups, and I find the power-ups very interesting throughout the levels.
There's one thing I like about them. One thing I found interesting. I don't know if you saw this, but with all the various power-ups, right? You have two options to collect them, or kind of. Like you can use like your main attack is Gex whipping his tail, right? To kill
Mhm.
enemies and all that. It makes perfect sense. And with all the power-ups, it doesn't matter the power-up. If you hit it with your tail, it just gives you a hit point
Yes.
no matter what. But but if you actually want to use the power up, you have to then use Gex's tongue to actually like eat the power up and get it, which could be either say it gives him more hit points, completely fills up his hit points, lets you like shoot fireballs out of your mouth.
Where and Gex goes, that's a spicy meatball.
Yeah, he says that. There's the like he can run super fast. He can jump higher. Like there's quite a few power-ups, but I found most of them outside of like ones improving your health to be completely useless.
They were situational at best. Like
Yeah.
the one that shoots fireballs was kind of useful, but you never got it in a place where it really helped.
Yeah, the most useful one was there was a specific I forget the exact level, but there was a specific situation where there was a bunch of TVs and it
Mhm.
gives you the lightning power up so you could just shoot lightning and I was just spamming the lightning at the TVs and they were just blowing up like crazy and
Yeah.
allowed me to clear through that whole thing without taking a hit. That was probably the most use I got out of one of the like attack kind of power ups. But outside of that, getting ones that upgrade you to say, 4 or 5 hit points is nice. It's a shame you can't carry it with you
Yeah.
throughout the whole game, but it would probably make the game a little too easy. Because I think the difficulty of this game, it's not really that difficult.
No.
Like there's ways early on of just completely of getting like 30 plus lives, like pretty easy. Finding
Yeah.
spots to farm 1-ups. But what sucks is if you save the game, turn it off, and turn it back on, it resets your live counter back to
Yep.
3.
It's got Mario logic.
Yeah, another Mario influence thing, which is annoying, but it is what it is.
Speaking of saving, I did want to bring this up.
The saving sucks. Pain in the ass. Pain in my ass.
It's not great, but I will bring it up because one of the reasons why Gex on 3DO is considered the definitive version is because of how it handles saving. In the PS1 version, they got rid of the save built-in save feature and replaced it with a password screen.
Why? The PS1 had memory cards. Why would they do that?
I'll never understand.
Does the Saturn one save?
I don't know. I've never played the Saturn version. So
we have to check.
We'll have to ask Rick. He has it.
Oh, yes. Rick, please let us know if Sega Saturn Gex saves. But yeah, how this game saves, it's very weird. There's 2 ways to do it. One, I think, isn't completely like guaranteed to save, but the second one is. The first way to save is that you get to save the boss of the level. You beat it, move on to the next level. In the manual, it says the game saves. Finicky. I think
sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. The true way to save is that some levels, like all the levels when you're on like the map, have like a little TV screen, and the TV screen is like the level, and some of them have a VCR under the TV. And so that basically tells you, oh, when you go in here, you can find like a VHS tape. And if you find the VHS tape and are able to beat the level with the VHS tape, it saves. And it saves every time. I didn't have any issues with it. In fact, if any of you want to play Gex on the 3DO, to save, the easiest way to save is go to the level called Tomato Soup in the graveyard level or the graveyard area. It's a pretty easy level, but at the very end, the VHS tape is right next to the exit. So there's no weird. If you can make it that far, just grab it and leave, and it saves, no problem. So that's a little tip for you guys out there.
Yeah, it's not the most convenient saving method of all time, but it's for what it is. I mean, it works sometimes. Well, one method works. The other
I will say it's better than say Mario World, because I correct me if I'm wrong, but in Mario World you can't save whenever you want. It only saves after a castle.
After a castle, and I think after there was one other instance I think it's saved, but I can't remember off the top.
Yeah, but beyond that, there's no way of actually going in and saving on your own, because at least with Gex you can kind of finesse it with that one specific level to where you're like, oh, I'm done. Let me just beat this level real quick, save, and then I can get out of here.
Yeah,
which is nice. And I don't know if Crystal intended that, or maybe they were like, oh, let's just do that as a little nice thing that people will find. I don't know. If that was intentional, that was nice of them.
Just out of curiosity, the demo in the background there doesn't show it, but what do you think of the death animation?
Oh, where he just like comes at you?
Yeah, he falls from the top of the screen.
Yeah, like his mouth is like you go in his mouth. Yeah. Funnily, I'll tell you what my son told me. He's like, Dad, I don't like that.
Yeah, it is a little off-putting the first time you see it.
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't care for it, but it is what it is.
Especially because it's silent. Like he just falls towards the screen and then that's it.
Yeah, and I think it's, for me, it didn't hit as hard. It's probably because Gex isn't taking any of this seriously. So why the hell should I?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Sorry. That's sort of my feeling on it, I guess.
Yeah,
but it's weird. Yeah, I guess we can go from there. Like the sound and music, like the sound design, the music.
I like the soundtrack. It's catchy.
It's good. It's not standout-ish, but it's not bad at all. It's perfectly fine.
I still love that.
It's no Earthworm Jim. That's a great soundtrack.
It's so for generic platformer music, I think it works very well. Like the graveyard theme, that first level music track, that still like sticks with me all the time. Like I love the catchiness, like the kind of keyboard sound in the background.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Some of the later levels are pretty good too. It's serviceable music. Like none of it is bad in my opinion. Like there's nothing I hated. Um, but none of it is like I'm not pursuing this like for like my phone or something to listen to at work.
Yeah, when you're trying to compare this to say Mario and Sonic's music, no, doesn't hold a candle at all.
Even like Crash Bandicoot had better music.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Crash was like right after this.
Yeah, so this was 95. Crash was like right around the corner.
Yeah. And it's weird how I wouldn't say they're too similar because Crash is more of like an evolution into the 3D stuff. But like Crash kind of became one of these sort of like up there with Mario and Sonic, I think at that time, just because of he was the de facto Sony mascot, for better or for
Yeah.
worse. So
Yeah, honestly. Um so what do you think of like graphically? Like I thought, for 32-bit like 2D game, mostly pre-rendered sprites, I thought it was pretty good.
I liked it. I think the game looks pretty solid. It's weird how it mixes um hold on a second. It's weird how it mixes like 2D and 3D stuff because you have like Gex is I think they Donkey Kong Country Gex. So he's like a 3D model that they sort of turn into like a 2D sprite, I think.
Yeah. Not nearly as sophisticated as like the Silicon Graphics like style that DKC used, but like it looks fine enough for what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and then everything else is like 2D sprite based, like all the enemies, the backgrounds, all that stuff. And I think it looks pretty good. The game, like when you first, it has a little issue, I think, with like color because it feels like a lot of it just has like kind of earthy, like greens and
Yeah.
browns and all that stuff.
It
There, I mean, like Cartoon Land does a good job with doing like funky colors, and even Rez's Lair has some interesting color stuff, and the Kung Fu-ville. But a lot of the color palette it's not as bright and colorful as you think it would be.
So my theory behind that, this is probably just an excuse and like isn't the actual reason, but the main gimmick of all the stages is they're supposed to be based off of 70s like movie themes, and like movies in the 70s kind of had a more drab like color palette.
Yeah, like a sepia tone kind of thing. Yeah. Like
This is probably
Technicolor
me.
is just coming out.
Yeah, this is probably me reaching a lot, but like that's kind of my theory on it.
No, I could see that.
I mean, it doesn't look bad. It just kind of it looks very much like it has a look to it that kind of just like it does one thing and it kind of just does that one thing pretty decently.
Yeah, but I will say it does stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, well,
It
there's a reason
does.
why Gex kind of stuck out at the time.
Is it because he doesn't shut the fuck up?
Well, even I'd say like even beyond that, because like most people noticed Gex right away just from like screenshots of it, because it is a striking looking game.
Yeah, I think it's because like if you look at him, you know, he's a gecko. He's got the sunglasses. He has like the crossed arms, like Sonic or whatever. Like he has that sort of like standout, cool attitude. And I think being like kind of pigeonholed as like the 3DO's de facto mascot, I think did elevate him a little bit as well.
Yeah. I also find it well, he was also Crystal Dynamics mascot for a long time. Like he was legit
Yeah,
there in their logo. I love this because he's like double logo there. But
yeah. Which I think that makes more sense that he would be the logo of Crystal Dynamics. It's a shame he's not anymore. It'd be cute if they still had his like imagine like you buy like say like one of the Tomb Raider games and they show Crystal Dynamics logo and there's just a little Gex head right there. That'd be cute.
for their anniversary, I would love if they brought back this classic logo. But
Yeah. That would be cool if they brought that back, but who knows? I mean,
um
they might when they do the Gex trilogy thing because they probably have to throw the Crystal Dynamics logo in there, so they might do that one.
yeah. I was gonna say too, we kind of glossed over them, but what'd you think of the boss fights in this game?
Not bad. Like an interesting mixture of ideas in there. Like they all weren't the exact same boss fight. They all had something kind of unique to them. Like you have the first one in the graveyard area, which is like the lady,
The
like
ghost
kind
lady,
of
yeah.
the ghost lady, kind of in the background with the skulls around her. Like she was pretty easy.
That was a
The
cool because that kind of like harkened to that reminded me of like a Castlevania boss fight where like the background is
yeah,
kind of like it's on like this like kind of like wheel and like it kind of like flows around you and the screen.
yeah, and I one-shotted her.
Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome. And then the second boss in the cartoon land is what, Captain like Flatulus or something stupid. Like
Yeah, the
he reminded me of Booger Man,
a
but to
little.
be fair, Booger Man lives in my head rent free. And that boss fight was a little more difficult for me. Like I was like, I have no idea how to beat this guy. And then
A lot of them.
I had to check a walkthrough, and how you beat him is you have to climb up to the ceiling and then like drop the anvils on his head, which
That
is
was cool.
weird.
That was cool. I like
It's a
thinking
unique
outside the
idea for the
box.
boss. Yeah, you have to think outside the box, and you use Gex's abilities
Mm.
in order to defeat him, which I thought was cool. It was a little obtuse, but when you do it, it's like, oh, it makes sense. It
Like,
was a
well,
cool way of doing it.
skipping ahead a little, but the final boss, Rez, I really liked the fight against Rez.
It was okay.
I like
I didn't like it. It's not my least favorite boss fight, but it wasn't as good.
I kind of like the
It
idea of you have to climb up the walls and then you have to platform across the television screens and then like you're actually over like a bottomless pit and you have to kind of like time out your movements.
yeah,
It was just
and
cool.
and you have to like use your collecting things with your tongue to get that specific fly. That's the only thing that does damage to res. It does a good job of using all of Gex's abilities in the fight and everything you've learned up until that point. I just don't think it really had that climactic feeling that a final boss fight should have.
No,
Just in my opinion,
to be honest,
it felt a little generic.
to be honest, the way the fight ends perfectly encapsulates just how much Gex doesn't give a shit during this entire
Yeah,
game.
basically, yeah. My favorite boss fight though is the one in the jungle area where you have to climb up that really tall tower with that weird ball snake coming at you. I was getting like Balls 3D flashbacks at that snake. But it was cool because you don't directly fight the boss. You just have to traverse the top of the tower and then get I think it was like a gorilla to knock all of those rocks down to completely obliterate the snake. But I like that. It was a cool boss fight. I enjoyed that one. And then oh shit, what was the kung fu area one?
That was like the turtle guy that
Yeah, that turtle one kind of sucked. Like he had a very weird pattern, and I think he took way too many hits.
yeah, that was my least favorite. Honestly, that's my least favorite level in the game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it felt by that point they were like kind of running out of ideas, or just maybe this idea wasn't the strongest one they had.
Did you
You
notice
know?
that the remotes in that level were shaped like Japanese like archways?
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, wow, they're really going hard into this.
Oh yeah. Different times, man. Different
Oh
times.
yeah.
But with ideas, like this game has quite a few of them actually. Like it's not a game that's struggling to come up with interesting like levels and obstacles for the player to get through. Like no, the game like knows what it wants to do, and it does a very competent job of giving you like a good 2D platformer experience, especially on a console that doesn't really have that many 2D platformers. Like even I think Will, friend of the show, Will, who's mostly in the novel console Discord, he even asked me, he's like, why does the 3DO not have that many 2D platformers? And my guess was that the people making games for 3DO weren't thinking about that. That they're like, oh, those are probably on like the SNES and Genesis. Like we want to do something fresh with this new technology. But I think Gex is just a prime example of like 2D platformers are just really, really good in general, and the 3DO can do them well. So why weren't there more of these? Like the only other one we've played on this show up to this point, I believe, was Soccer Kid.
Soccer Kid, yes.
And Soccer Kid is a really good concept that wasn't executed very well.
Yeah. Soccer
Whereas
Kid's a
this,
fine game that just doesn't really it's fine enough, but it's not like anything you write home about.
exactly. Whereas this, I think the concept of it is kind of like not the strongest, but it's executed very, very well.
Yeah, like control wise, Gex like controls like a dream to me. Like he's like
Oh yeah,
one of the better programmed. This is a very solid feeling game. Like there was never a point
yeah,
where other than like obviously like the 3DO, inherently is no, we'll discover it more as we go on, but the 3DO inherently is not the most powerful system on in the world.
No.
Um, and Gex does struggle a little bit at times to run. It's just unfortunately a property, an aspect of the 3DO itself.
Yeah, that was sort of my biggest issue with Gex is the performance of the game. Because yeah, the controls are great. Like he doesn't try to copy Mario or Sonic's like control scheme. Because if you've ever played a lot of these like lesser known platformer mascot games from this era, a lot of them are just like copying Sonic because he
Yeah.
was like the hot shit at the time, like that kind of style. And it just doesn't really work because a lot of them don't have that programming wizardry to make it work. And even the ones that try to copy Mario, it's like it's easier to do, but again, it's like it just doesn't feel great. Whereas Gex, he feels much more, in a way, he's like much more modern. Like there's no real momentum to his movements. Like not, he has a run button, but you don't have like to pick up speed or do any of that kind of more physicsy type of stuff you do with those other games, which in a way I think is better because it allows this one to stand out and give you a different kind of experience with a platformer. But yeah, it controls super tight. Like Gex never felt unresponsive to me.
You know
You
what
know?
it kind of reminds me of? It actually reminds me a bit of Rayman 1.
Yeah, I could see that. You know, that game hasn't aged nearly as well as Gex has, in my opinion.
No, Rayman 1 is a brutally hard game that is unashamed of how brutally hard it is.
It's a rough one. It's a rough one. Like I don't know. That'd be an interesting one to do in the future.
It
But yeah,
is,
that's
to
a that's a
me,
that's a weird one. Didn't they make that? Didn't they put down the Jaguar?
it debuted on the Jaguar.
That that's weird as fuck.
I own the Jaguar version. It is actually really impressive.
Yeah, because the game is beautiful,
Oh,
absolutely
it is.
gorgeous. I think I have the GBA port of that, and yeah, that game still looks amazing. But yeah, that's kind of a weirder one. I could see the Rayman and I see like it being similar to Rayman, but I think Gex is a more fulfilling experience of a platformer in
Yeah,
comparison.
Gex
Like
has,
like Rayman got better later.
yeah. Ironically, both abandoned 2D to go to 3D right away.
And I've never played either of those series 3D efforts. I've only ever done the 2D stuff. So, and with
Okay.
Rayman, obviously I've done Origins and Legends, and those two games are phenomenal.
Mhm. So I want to bring it up because the ending to this game is the most hilarious fucking thing ever.
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty wild.
Gex literally defeats Rez. Spoilers for anyone who cares.
He
Honestly,
beats the final boss.
yeah.
If
And then
if that's a spoiler.
he literally gets shot back out of the TV dimension, lands back in his couch exactly where he was, and his response is just, "Okay, cool. I wonder what's on HBO." And then it goes right to credits.
It would have been funnier if he said Cinemax, because I'd be like, oh, we know why he's going to Cinemax. He earned
Yeah.
it. He earned it after that.
I love Dana Gold's delivery of, "Okay, cool." Just like he's so nonchalant. He does
Like
not give a shit.
like I could see that rubbing some people the wrong way, you know, that like he's not taking this seriously at all. But in a way, it's almost kind of his appeal.
Oh yeah.
In a way that it's so like they just lean into the just totally laissez-faire sort of vibe, you
Like
know,
he
that it
literally,
becomes almost like parody.
the ending is so unfulfilling that it works for this game because Gex is such an
I mean,
does not
what
give a shit character.
yeah, because you're playing it and I wasn't even thinking about how's this gonna end, you know? Like in a sense of like, oh, is the ending gonna be satisfying? I'm like, it probably won't be. I'll just be satisfied that I beat the game, you know? And it's from that kind of era where like your satisfaction is you beat the game.
I got, honestly, the laugh I got from the nonchalant, "Okay, cool," at the end literally made the entire experience worth it.
I could see that because when that happened to me, I'm like, you motherfucker. Like you like, oh, this ain't nothing kind of thing. Like, come on,
Yeah.
dude. Like that's gonna bite you in the ass.
Well,
But
I don't know. In the third game, he gets it on with a pre-rendered video woman. So
oh boy, that predating Sonic on that one.
yeah. Um, So one other thing I have to bring up too is what did you think of the song at the end of the game?
That song was kind of dope, actually. I kind of liked
I
it. That was my
so
favorite tune in the whole game.
I wanted to use it as the credits for this episode, but I believe it has copyright in it, and I don't want to risk it.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah. Everybody listening, like just YouTube, like the Gex like credits music or whatever, and just listen to that tune. It's pretty good, actually. I kind of like. I might put it on my phone.
it is the most '90s like cheese you'll ever hear,
Like
and I
people are just
love
in
it.
the background going Gex, Gex.
Yeah, and it's like
It's like a soccer chant.
yeah.
Like go to the FC match and just start shouting Gex.
So one thing too,
I
I
think
noticed.
Gex looks like he likes soccer, doesn't he? He looks like a
Yeah,
soccer guy.
yeah, probably. I mean,
Yeah.
he likes nude funker size, so
He got well, yeah. Though if you like that, you have to like soccer. There's no other option.
it's funny too because a lot of people are like they always put Gex in that category of like edgy mascots from the '90s. Like, there's nothing edgy about Gex, like nothing edgy.
They present him as edgy, but in reality, he's about as edgy as like an internet shit poster.
Pretty. I mean,
That's
if
basically what he is.
if Gex was a modern platformer, he would totally be a shit poster.
Yeah, like I guarantee you, this is like 95. He was probably on some forums, some internet
Oh yeah,
forums, spewing nonsense. Like if you guys have ever looked at like archived 90s internet forum stuff, it is amazing.
it was a very different time.
Yes, and it's kind of awesome. It's not as unhinged as things can be now, though. You know, it's more. I hate to use this term. It's more real. There's something
It,
more real about the way people presented themselves on the internet back then.
yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, other than that though, there's not really much else to cover on Gex.
Other than it was a surprisingly good game.
Yeah, like there's a reason why it is considered like one of the reason it's there's a reason why it is like considered the 3DO's like crowning achievement at times.
It's one of the marquee titles for sure.
So I guess before we get into it, we should probably talk about reception for this game at the time.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
curious. What did people think about Gex back then?
so reception wise, the 3DO version got very what good reviews overall, like 4 out of 5 stars, 8 point. EGM gave it a 8.6.
8.675.
Yeah,
Guys, come
some
on. Just give
weird.
it a 9. Come on.
Next Generation gave it a 4 to 5 stars. The lowest ranked 3DO review is CD Player. That's a reviewing site for the
Oh
time.
yeah. Oh, for
They
sure.
gave it 6 out of 10. A lot of the reviews I noticed that reviewed both the 3DO and then later the PS1 Saturn versions tended to be a lot harsher with the PS1 Saturn versions for whatever reason.
Is it just because it was a re-release, and usually with re-releases, critics tend to be a little bit harsher the second time around?
Yeah, it was probably that, and it was a different reviewer who didn't have the same taste.
It might have been, yeah. Because yeah, this originally came out on the 3DO in April 95, and then the PlayStation version was December 95, as was the Saturn version. And then it hit PCs in November of 96. And funnily enough, Gex was published by Microsoft on the PC version.
Mm.
Interesting.
Another interesting one too is Game Informer gave it a 9.25, reviewing the PS1 version, but that's still an interesting review. Like, they liked it.
I don't get those like real deep decimal points. Like at that rate,
Yeah.
just use like a percentage system. You know, like oh, it's an 82%.
Mm.
You know, like 0.5s are okay. Like whenever I rate games, like I do a 10-point scale, but I won't go like 8.25. Like I have to commit to either it's an 8 and 8 or a half, 8.5. I'm not going to go in the middle. I have to commit.
What's funny to me is most reviewers like highly praised like the gameplay, the graphics, like the levels, Dana Gold's performance, but a lot of them like criticize the comedy as being not good.
Yeah, but it's not enough to really weigh down the game, in my opinion.
Well, especially in this game where it's very much just kind of a thing that happens.
It's window dressing.
Pretty much. I know in the sequels, that's where he starts to get really zany with his like lines of dialogue. which I did
Yeah.
find out the New Jersey joke came from this game, not Gex 2.
Oh yeah, because I heard him say that. He's like, "Oh, so this is what New Jersey is, or something."
When he gets to Rez's lair, he's like, this is what New Jersey look. No, he's like, this is the fabled New Jersey.
Yeah, or some shit like that. Yeah, he makes a New Jersey joke, and I'm like, "What the fuck, man? Why are you being so mean?"
It's not as funny as the one in Gex 2. The one in Gex 2 is still the best one. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I have not played Gex 2 or Gex 3. I'm assuming we'll play them for the show eventually, because I think this is probably the best avenue to talk about the other Gex
Yeah.
sequels. But
they're tangentially related, and I feel like we should cover things like that down the line. Now the real question is, before we get to that, there's no memory manager, so FC1 players, sorry.
Did you know? I was just looking, like the game Whiplash that Crystal Dynamics made for the PS2. Apparently, that was supposed to be a Gex 4. That was the original idea.
Yeah, I believe a lot of members of the Gex team at the time worked on that game.
Yeah, but then they decided to not make it Gex and do something else, which to me is like doesn't make any sense. Like just do Gex 4.
Yeah, I guess they didn't want to have to go. They probably didn't want to have to pay Dana Gold, and they probably didn't want to have to write all the lines of dialogue.
Yeah, I guess. And then I totally forgot about this. And it was like 2 years ago, somebody unearthed a old prototype for a game called Gex Junior.
Gex Junior.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to send you the video?
Yeah, you can send me that. I'll check it out later.
Yeah. It's like a little 30-second clip. So it was supposed to be for the PS1 in like 2001, I think. Yeah. Interesting.
I'm assuming a lot of this stuff was before Crystal got their hands on the Legacy of Kain franchise, and then they kind of that just became their thing.
It might have been around the same time, I think, because the Gex Junior, according to this, it was going to be in 2001, and they were already doing Legacy of Kain by then.
So. Oh yeah,
yeah. So maybe they were just thinking like, oh well, Gex was still like it was kind of a big deal for us. We should try to keep it going.
One other thing before we get to our ranking, I noticed this when I was watching the credits. Apparently, Silicon Knights assisted with development of Gex.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I was like,
Yeah, and also Beam Software ported this game to PlayStation and Sega Saturn, and then Kinsoft did the PC version. So Crystal only worked on the 3DO version.
Yeah, I think that's why 3DO version is considered the best version by most people still to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and it became the pack-in later on, which is a much better pack-in than Crash and Burn by a mile, which might explain why this specific jewel case version I have is so easy to find.
Yeah, because finding the full box not easy.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Gex is the best-selling 3DO game.
I believe it is.
Yes, because the 3DO sold over 2 million, roughly.
Yes.
And then, according to this, the best-selling game is Gex, selling over 1 million. So about a 50% attach rate for the system, which makes sense, especially if it became bundled with the console through most of its life. Because my guess is when they got to this, they were like, throw this in the pack. Fuck that Crash and Burn game. Get it out of here.
Yeah. So yeah, now I guess like we do every episode, must play, okay, stay away. I'm going to just go right from there. It's a must play.
I'm going to say must play somewhere else, because for me, I thought I didn't get too deep into it, but the performance of this game on 3DO hardware, it could have just been the FC10 model. I don't know, but I just had so much slowdown, like to the point I thought the game was just kind of naturally slower. But then at one point I was like, oh, I kind of need a walkthrough for a little thing. And then I saw a walkthrough of the PS1 version, and the game is running super fucking fast and like perfectly. And I'm like, holy shit. And then when I went back to the 3DO version, I'm like, oh God, this game is so slow. It is chugging like really hard. And the game would like freeze for like a split second when I would go between like levels. And every time it happened, I was like, oh shit, the game didn't crash on me, did it? The performance of this game is not good. It's very bad.
It's an unfortunate example that the 3DO really wasn't that powerful of a system.
Yeah, which is a shame, because this is probably like one of the best games the console has, and probably one of the most notable games the console has.
I
And even
also
then,
think
it doesn't
too
feel it's optimized very well for the hardware.
it's definitely not optimized well. That's probably my one downside to Gex is the 3DO wasn't the most groundbreaking 32-bit console there was. It was probably the most basic of all the 32-bit systems in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The thing is though, a good developer could get around that. Like we saw with Need for Speed, that Need for Speed shouldn't be as good as it is, but it is.
Yeah, like EA were wizards on this thing. But I think maybe some of the hardware issues comes down to Crystal Dynamics was still a new studio.
Yeah,
So they were
that's
probably still figuring it out.
and and you also got to think too. Beam Software ported it over to PS1 and Saturn. Beam Software were veterans by this point, so they probably
Oh
just
yeah,
knew.
Beam knew what they were doing.
Yeah, so
So
it's an unfortunate case of just the time, the system, and the timing probably wasn't the best, but it doesn't hurt the overall game.
I will say, despite the slowdown, it never got in the way. Like it was never a reason I died or anything like that. So I can give it that. And I know that on RetroArch, there's that Opera 3DO core, and in there you have options of overclocking the CPU to like twice what the original 3DO had. And I don't know if that helps. I have no idea. So maybe I should try that. Like throw this ROM in the Opera emulator with twice the CPU speed, and maybe it kind of helps the game run faster. So,
Yeah.
which would be a good thing for sure. But even outside of that, I would still say the game's a must play. It's definitely worth playing. It's one of the best games we've played on the show by a long shot.
Oh yeah.
But I would say if the PlayStation 1 version is easier to find and play, just play that one.
So putting aside the fact that you have to get a 3DO itself, which is already kind of an ask, this is an incredibly common game to find. Like it is not that hard at all. It's on PSN still, I believe. So if you really want to play Gex, it's there for download.
Yeah, and I think the jewel case for the 3DO version I got, I don't think I paid more than $30 for it. It's only expensive if you go for the long box version that Bill has over there. Like that's the pricey one, but if you just want the jewel case, you'll pay like 30-ish bucks for it. And that's not that's not a bad price at all.
Yeah. And it's a fun game overall that like honestly doesn't deserve the hate that it's gotten over the last decade or so.
I think some of the hate's starting to subside. Like it doesn't feel as bad as it used to be, because I think now through emulation getting so much better, people have actually played the game and have gone like, oh, it's actually not that bad. You know, I wasn't sure what to expect with this guy at all. I had no idea. And I was pleasantly surprised. And I'm glad I was surprised. And I'm like, oh, I like this. Like this was a good game. I could totally see myself playing this game again in the future. You know, maybe just emulating the PlayStation 1 or Saturn version to see how different it is. Maybe downloading it on GOG. I believe it's still on GOG, actually. Published by Square Enix on GOG. Yep. So if you want to see the Square Enix logo in front of this fucker, there you go. Go to GOG.
Just picturing
maybe that's controller support.
I'm just picturing Gex with like Cloud Strife hair now.
Why isn't Gex in Kingdom Hearts? God damn it.
I know. Missed opportunity.
Absolutely.
That would be such a random appearance.
Oh, and right now Gex is on sale on GOG for $1.50. $1.50 on GOG. That's a steal. At $1.50, absolutely worth playing.
Oh yeah. So yeah, other than that though, definite must play. I'm still not sure if I'd consider it the best 3DO game. I'm gonna wait till we get to episode 50 because I believe we agreed we're gonna rank all of the games we played.
I think we can safely say this is top 5.
Oh yeah.
Easy top 5, maybe top 3.
Yeah.
Like me, I would put it like probably my 5 favorite games we've played have been this, Road Rash, Incredible Machine, Return Fire, and
Need for Speed, maybe.
Probably Need for Speed or Icebreaker.
Oh yeah, Icebreaker. That's
somewhere in there. Yeah. Like Gex is definitely up there as one of the better games in the series. So
yeah,
it's one of the better games on the system. And yeah, eventually I'd say we could probably do single episodes on Gex 2 and Gex 3. That would be cool.
Yeah, because
And then,
eventually we've already kind of established. Eventually, we're going to run out of 3DO games for the console that we can physically talk about, and then we're
Yeah.
going to start branching off to like 3DO's post console career because they had a surprisingly big career after that.
oh, for sure, for sure. And yeah, and they're doing that Gex trilogy of like limited run is doing that eventually. So it would make sense um to talk about that as well. But
Oh yeah,
but we have no idea whenever that's coming out. So, who knows?
yeah,
I'll
um,
probably buy it when it comes out anyways.
yeah. And it'll be
'Cause
cool to play Gex on modern systems.
yeah, get all those achievements.
But yeah, I think we have established that episode 50 we're going to do a ranking episode of the games we've played.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that'll be a fun game to do because I've actually been going back and listening to some of our older episodes just to kind of see where I'm sitting on some of those games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to shift around because I feel like we were harsher to certain games earlier on, and or maybe lenient with certain ones. So
Because I think we were trying to find the good stuff,
yeah,
which was kind of harder because we didn't want to just do all of the good stuff out the gate. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, we found some hidden gems though in the process.
Oh yeah, and we still have more to go. Like there's still quite a few games that I want to do.
Oh yeah,
That I'm like really excited to actually like play and talk about. So
I got one in the mail today that we're going to be talking about eventually. I'll save that for later.
yeah,
And I
well,
have,
I got one in the mail yesterday, and then I have a couple more coming as well. That'll be good ones to talk about. And
nice.
then one I took a bit of a risk on. It's going to be a while till it gets here because I took a risk on it, but I'll let you know when I get it.
Okay. But yeah, speaking of the older episodes of the show, we're actually we can announce this now. Next week we're going to be talking about Way of the Warrior, and we're actually going to have Casey from episode 3 of the show. He's coming back, and he's going to join us for that one.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. I haven't met him, so I don't know anything. But yeah, that'll be cool.
He said that we have a very good repertoire, and he's enjoying the episodes, so that's a good
That's
sign.
good. Thank you. And yeah, Way of the Warriors, that's going to be an interesting one.
I'm ready to listen to some White Zombie.
I feel like you want to do it just so you can talk about Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog, that, and also I love really shitty Mortal Kombat clones. So
Yeah, because I how about I'll say this before we do Way of the Warrior, just off the top of your head right now, which is the better game, this or Kasumi Ninja?
Way of the Warrior, just because it functions. That's really about it.
Okay, then
I guess
how about we'll both play Way of the Warrior, and then for funsies, let's play Kasumi Ninja, just to see which one's better.
Okay. Kasumi Ninja is. I do own that, so I can I can boot it up at any time.
I've held the box for that game in my hand once.
Yeah. It has. So I will say, Kasumi Ninja does have a Scotsman that shoots fireballs out of his dick.
Which you think would make it the better game, just on that.
You'd think, but the game plays like garbage. So
we'll get there. We'll get there.
yeah. But yeah, other than that though, before we do the closings, do you want to shout out the stream tomorrow night, or?
Yes, sir. So I'm now streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Thrack94. Every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., you can watch me play a handful of Sega Genesis games, and we are ranking them as well. So I take requests. I have quite a few requests from Bill and some from other people in the who watch the streams, as well as my own picks. So I'll try to sprinkle them in. And I'm considering maybe every once in a while doing like a side stream where I play, say, one of the longer like RPGs or adventure games, like for like by itself for like say 2 hours before I really talk about it. Because I've been itching to play a little Beyond Oasis because that's a really cool game. But I feel if I do that, I might do it kind of like it's like a extra stream, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. So that'll actually be a shouldn't say tomorrow night because when this episode comes out, it'll be the night of the episode. But,
It'll be tonight. Yes.
yes.
Tune in tonight, you folks.
One other little piece of housekeeping I just want to shout out. Not related to 3DO, but just podcasting in general. Going forward, our sister show Geek Addicts now has its own dedicated feed for podcasts, so it's no longer in the GNC feed directly. So yeah, that's now going forward going to be its own thing, separate from everything.
I remember when you first like did that, some people were like, "Oh shit, what happened to Geek Addicts? Is it going away?"
Yeah, I didn't think about it when I posted that. I was like, yeah, that sounds kind of like going away, but no, we're not. We're just now it's easier to find us because we're not buried in with gaming collecting anymore. It's its own stream.
Well, that's good.
Feed.
That's good.
Also,
as it deserves.
Yeah, and it's just more convenient now. I've got all 3 podcasts under one account now, so editing and managing is so much easier.
This man is a freak, everyone.
Yeah, I know. I know. But yeah, once again, guys, thanks for joining us on the 3DO Experience. You can find the 3DO Experience on all your major podcasting platforms. You can also find the episodes on YouTube along with a video version. Hi, guys. And yeah, if you can find all of our links at Linktree/The Barbecue Games, and you can also join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to talk all things gaming, collecting, 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, talk gaming, anime, or just general nonsense. That's pretty much what goes on over there. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.